Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, 8 Ways to Improve Your Costpoint System Productivity. I'm Don Carnevale, Director of Corporate Marketing at Neosystems. Now let's get started. Next slide, please. Thank you. So very quickly about Neosystems, we have 4 main lines of business that I'll touch on very briefly. The first is our newest area of business, which is managed security. We provide full CMMC support services related to compliance around NIST 800-171 and the CMMC security protocols. That includes supply chain readiness and education, as well as program management and secure enclaves for your CUI data. Next is our hosting business. We have a FedRAMP ready cloud. We're the only partner in the Deltek ecosystem to offer a FedRAMP ready cloud that meets all the security regulations and will be listed on the FedRAMP marketplace. Next, this is where we got our start 17 years ago, managed services. We offer full outblown, outsourced accounting, human capital, and IT outsourced services, managed services, everything for accounting, from a virtual CFO to an accounting clerk, any kind of staff augmentation with a full compliance along the way. And then the last line of business, which is focused more on what we're speaking about today, is our systems integration group. This is where we handle everything from implementations, upgrades, integrations, extensibilities, system reviews, optimizations, data migration, all along best-in-class partners such as Deltek, where we offer all those services across the board from start to finish from a professional services team. Now I'd like to hand things over to our speaker today, Susan Mitchell, our VP of Professional Services ERP Systems. Susan?
Hello, I'm Susan Mitchell, and I'm going to be talking to you today about basically how to optimize your system and how to get, how to get more productivity from it and everything like that. So we're going to try to just, I have a lot to cover today, so I'm going to try to just, dive right on in here. So our first thing that we're going to talk about is signs your Costpoint needs help. So some of those signs are extended closing process. So that basically means your system, it's taking you an excessively long time to close your books, maybe 30 days or something like that. Missed deadlines. So if for some reason you're not making, bank deadlines, various deadlines, to external and internal users. System reports not tying. So that's one where, things aren't, you're printing things out and things aren't, kind of, being as expected. Excessive employee work hours. So your staff is, working a ton of hours. Employee frustration. You have a lot of users that are frustrated, with things that are going on in the system. Double entry. So people are having to do things in 2 systems. They're entering in one system, they're entering in Costpoint. Licensed modules not in use. So this is one where you had a requirement, you license the module from Deltek, but you're not using it for whatever reason. So that's another sign that you might need to kind of look at some things. So just to continue on, so what we're going to talk about today, and I have a lot to go through, so if I go very fast, just know this will be posted online. So our first thing is user interface optimization. So what I will tell you is this is one of the most unused functionalities that I've seen. And when we go in to do system assessments or we start talking to people, a lot of them don't even know that this functionality exists. So what I want to show you is you can go in and customize what somebody is going to see. So the way that you do that is if you come into the system and you go to this little icon over here and you click on select user profile, you can choose a profile, and when you go into manage profile, it will actually allow you, and you go into a screen, you can go in and customize that screen. So if I was to look at this screen, this opportunity screen, how it normally looks, I normally would see much more information. So I have all of these things that I would see, but in my database where I have used my user interface profile, I've customized it, you can see that there's all these things that the user is no longer seeing. So to do that, I come in and I set up a user profile, I go into that, And then I would come in and say, show hide screen controls. So this allows me to choose, and I just click and unclick the ones that I would want to see. So this allows me to remove fields from the screen for a user to see. So if there are ones that I didn't want the user to see, then I could just remove them. The same thing, I could remove some of the groupings from that. And I can also adjust the toolbar. So if I wanted somebody to not be able to query or not be able to switch between the table and the form view, then I have the ability to do that. So I can control the user's interface with various screens. So I have the ability to do that. I also can go in and do things like I can adjust how they see a table. So if I was in here in table view and I went under options and I clicked on, hang on 1 second, it's actually not bringing it up for me, the assign table view, it would allow me to adjust the table view for the preferences. But that's how you can essentially use the user interfaces. So then I would just exit the profile, and that would take me out of being able to adjust that. So now when that user goes in, all they would see on that screen are the ones that I identified. So our other item, and I'm actually going to just scroll on down here, that I want to talk about is you can also set the user's home screen. So if I wanted a user to come into the same screen each time, like upon logging in, I can actually go to their user setup. So we'll go into mine. And I can come under user interface and I can default the application. So if I want them to go into a specific screen when they first log in, say a dashboard or something like that, I can identify that also by the user. So I have the ability to adjust how my users are interfacing with the system. And that's one way you can optimize things, by making them not see things that they don't need to bother with, and kind of basically filtering out the clutter. So our next item, as far as optimization, is kind of what I call daily user tips and tricks. So you have the ability in Costpoint to now go in and do cut and paste. And I don't know how many of you have actually been able to use the cut and paste functionality, but if I went in and say I had a large amount of vendor employee data that I wanted to enter. So if I had, say, Anthem, this is a good one. Hang on 1 second. So if I had this and I wanted to pull some of the data, if I copy this format to Excel, so you now see that I have my format for my vendor for that table. And once I have that, if I wanted to have load my vendor employee information and I had everything in a list, I can then go in and fill in this information in this format and then copy and paste it back into Costpoint. So I can copy and paste it back into this format in here. Okay. The next one is you can do saved queries. So saved queries allows you to go in if you have information that you're wanting to go in and query. So let's do opportunities. So if I was in my opportunities module and I had, sorry, get rid of that. And I had things that I was wanting that I always went in here and did. So I could come in here and I could say, I could choose a business unit. I could choose, certain saved parameters. Like if I had closed reasons that were specific, I could come in here and I could use the same save parameters. So let's use, I'm trying to think if I have one that's saved. I'll come back to that one, but you can basically save the parameters in there. So our next one that we want to talk about is printing functionality users don't realize exists. So for this one, if you had a contract and say, I want to show this one. So if I come in here and I choose one of my contracts, I actually have the ability, this is all of my contract information, I have the ability to come in here and print a report that is actually looks somewhat like a contract brief. So it's pulling all of my fields, it tells everything about my contract. So what I will tell you is one of the best functionalities that you can use is if you go in and you can print from these screens. So remember that you can go in and pull data and print information that you need using these various methods. The next item I want to just point out is parameters. So a lot of times when we go in and we start talking to people, about their usage of the system and asking them what their pain points are and everything like that, one of the things they haven't been doing is using parameters. So, for this one, as an example, if you go to the print revenue summary report, this one has many things that you can choose, so many criteria. So if you had, all these various ones that you could choose from. So what a parameter allows you to do is it allows you to save the settings that you've chosen for that screen. So if I just came in here and chose this one that I had in here, see how it pulls back up all of my parameters for this screen. So this is one function I would say definitely take advantage of, and definitely make sure your users know it exists. That's one of the main things that I've seen, is that people just didn't realize how to use this. Our next item is understanding where to get help and tools available. And although this sounds very basic, and many of you probably, are like, oh, well, I knew that exactly. But if you go into a screen and you're in a screen and you click on the help, there's all of these great tools that can help a user understand what's going on or what's expected of them in that screen. So I just want to point out, this specifically because many times, I start talking to users and things like that, and they say, oh, I never knew that was there. Nobody ever told me that. So I just want to point that out. And I also want to point out the visual and learning aids, because these are all of these nice documents that Deltek has given us are all accessible through that link. The next item is some standard, tools that are in Costpoint. So the defer unposted transactions. So this is the one that allows you to actually, if you're closing the books and you still have transactions that are in, say, period 1, but now you're in period 2 and you're done with the close and you want to push those to the next period and change the period on them, that's what this task will allow you to do in Costpoint. There's also one that will change the period report parameters. So if you are in Costpoint and you want to change in mass the report parameters, you can come in here and do that, so that on all of your saved parameters, it will change the period that you're using it for. So if you're done closing period 1 and you're in period 2 now, you can come in and change the parameters in mass using this screen. The project utilities. So I point this one out because these are things like comparing the project ledger, compare project ledger to general ledger. So these, again, there's tools and things that are in Costpoint that I just want to remind everybody that you should use them. So, and these are ones that you should do, like the compare project ledger to general ledger should be done at the end of every month. And then the last one from a daily user tips and tricks is the monthly reconciliation. So you should every month, and this for some people is very basic, you should be tying out your open AP to your, to your trial balance, your AR aging to your trial balance. Does your revenue summary tie to your income statement? Those basic kind of reconciliations, but they're very important because those will tell you if you have a problem with your system or not. Okay. So our next one I want to talk a little bit about is the job server and batch functionality. So For those of you that are not familiar with the job server, it's been around for a long time, but what it allows you to do is it allows you to essentially kick off processes that are in a sequential kind of format, and lets them run. It can let them run overnight. So a lot of times when I go in and I start talking to people, they'll tell me about, they have this thing that takes so long to run and it hangs up their whole computer and they can't do anything else while they're running it and stuff like that. So that is a prime example of a good time to use the job server, because essentially that person, while they're running that on in Costpoint on their system, if they're running it in interactive mode, then that is tying them up in Costpoint and they can't do other functions in Costpoint while that process is running. So from a productivity perspective, that's a good feature to use to, improve your productivity of your employees. Same thing with batch functionality. So if they are kicking off, if you don't want to use the job server and run things overnight, you can use the batch functionality, which allows the user to submit the item in batch mode. So instead of using, and I'll show you one really quickly. So instead of having to use, just going and printing, they would run it in batch. So they can submit to batch, and then they would just enter, the information for the name and everything like that, and then it would submit it in batch mode. So what that means is that it just, once they hit print, instead of it holding up their screen and keeping them in here while it's printing, it will just give them a message that it's been submitted in batch, and then you can even set it up to email you once the report is done. The next one that I want to just mention is the archive functionality. So within Costpoint, you can now print things to go to archive. So this little archive item over here is the one that you would check if you're going to use that. And you have to set up the archive. That's one of the things that you would have to do. And you can set up the archive so that they're grouped, so that the documents are grouped. So if you wanted one, say for project setup or project, reports and things like that, you could do that. But the main thing with the archive is that you can print the reports to archive and go access them. So this is where you would set up your archive functionality. And then this is where you can go print it. So when you archive it, it automatically prints over to this section, and you can give users access to here where they can then download the archived report. What I will tell you, the way I've seen this used really well, and it helped improve productivity, was I had a client that was they had 6 or 7 users that were printing PSRs, and they were all, what we found out later, printing kind of a subset of the same PSR. And what was happening was they were all bumping up against each other at the same time when they were trying to run the reports on Tuesdays, and it was causing them their productivity issues, because it was taking them 6 to 8 hours just to get these PSRs run out of the system. Well, once we went back and we figured out what they had been running, we were able to set up a job server that would print all of their different PSR reports to an archive, and then the users could go out and just access whichever ones they needed. So the reports, instead of having the same report print 6 times by 6 different people, they ran it one time, and then the users could just go access it. So it cut their processing time down from 8 hours to like 30 minutes. So literally they had a huge increase in productivity in using this functionality. The next one I would tell you is workflow. So workflow is one of those things. So originally in Costpoint, it was not as robust as it is now. Workflow has come a long way. So if you go over into workflow and you look at it, you'll notice that there's new workflow, and then there's the old that's been there. The new one is the one that I'm referencing, and you can do somewhat simplistic workflows. So as an example, you can come in and do like an AP voucher approval. And what I will tell you is, if you're wanting to know how to do this and everything like that, on the DLZ, for those of you that have access to the Deltec Learning Zone, there is a presentation that actually walks you through how to do a simplistic workflow. So you can use that if you're, self-inclined, and go and kind of show yourself how to do workflow and set up simple ones. So you can do the ones that, I've seen many, like the one we were just looking at. You can do voucher approvals where it will prompt the approver of the voucher to go and approve it, or JE approvers where it will send an email to a JE approver and remind them that they need to go into the system and approve a journal entry. The next thing we can do to increase productivity is third-party apps versus new functionality and modules that are integrated. So a great example of this is we used to have, kind of a bunch of different third-party applications for CRM and our contracts, information and our subcontract information. So now what's happened is, instead of having all those third-party kind of applications and products and things like that, you can take advantage of the contracts module, which integrates all of those items together, and then can feed things over to your planning module, to your projects module, to procurement. Like, it kind of brings it all together. So look at items like that to also increase your productivity and make things more efficient. The seventh one that I want to mention is data maintenance. So in many cases, a lot of databases have been around now for 15, 20 years. A lot of people have a lot of data in their databases. So what I will tell you is, if you're experiencing processing issues, or you're seeing some performance, degradation and stuff like that, look at your data. What do you really need? Is there data that can be purged? And everyone always kind of freaks out when I first say purge, but realize you can always make a copy of that database and either archive it or put it in a data warehouse, or even just set it aside, but then get rid of some of the data in the production database that's slowing down your processing. So that's something you should really think about. The other thing I want to point out is active and inactive flags. So this is something that when we go in and we start looking at systems, that people are not consistent about, like when they're activating or inactivating, projects. Typically, what I will say is we try to, I always will advise, leave the project active until the end of the year. You can make it not allow charging, but keep it active throughout that whole fiscal year, so that your reporting is whole if you happen to be reporting things off of active and inactive. The next one is end dating accounts and organizations. So this one is very helpful when it comes to if you've had org changes, or you're doing any type of, like a rate change or something, and you're not going to use a set of orgs, or you have a set of accounts that you're not going to use. The end dating, the fiscal year, end date on a account org or account organization links is very helpful, and it prevents users from inputting data past the period that you wanted, and keeps you from having to go back and do rework. The other one I would say is periodically assess user access rights. So this is one where I've seen in many cases, and people say, how does this affect productivity? Well, you'll have users that don't understand necessarily things they shouldn't be doing. So they have access to it. They go in and they do something that they don't realize. And then there's a lot of rework and fixing that takes place. So that's why I will say, assess your user rights periodically, and make sure that the organization, hasn't grown from, 50 people to, 500 people, and nobody ever went back and looked at access rights. The last one I would say is extensibility and integration. So when we talk about extensions, it doesn't have to be something big. It could be something as simple as, one of my clients, they had a process where requisitioners or requesters would submit a paper form or an email to a requisitioner. And the requisitioner is who is on the purchase rec in the Costpoint, in the system. The problem they had is they needed to know who the requester was. So in their case, they literally just added one field, which was a lookup for the requester's, user or employee ID. And that was very helpful for them. Then they could query and find, who had requested it. It was a huge win for them. So extensions, what I'll say on that, it doesn't have to be something big. It can be something small that will increase your productivity. And then the last one I would say is interfaces. So there are, interfaces are another way to increase your productivity and keep people from having to do duplicate entries. So if you have a payroll system, a third-party provider for payroll, and you're doing labor and things in Costpoint, then that can keep you from doing duplicate entry in two systems. So that's another way you can improve your productivity. And that is pretty much all I have at this point. Dawn, did you have any questions or anything?
Yes, thanks, Susan. That was really great. So we do have a question coming in, and ladies and gentlemen, I would encourage you, if you have any questions for Susan, we have about 3 minutes remaining in our time. If you have any questions for Susan that she could answer quickly, please enter those into the Q&A area on your screen within the Zoom window. One question that came in, Susan, is this: can we set up workflow to send an email to PMs to go into the system to approve subcontractor invoices?
Yes, you can. If they're entering, and I'm assuming in this case that you're saying that you're using the subcontractor management module. That would be my question back on that. So perhaps we take that one offline, because I kind of have some additional, but in general, yes, you could.
Yes, that person's confirming that they're referring to the subcontractor management module.
Okay, yes, you could.
Okay, we'll give just another few moments for any final questions for Susan. Okay, it appears that there's no additional questions. Susan, I want to thank you for a great presentation. I also obviously want to thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for attending today. If you have any questions regarding this or any of the other services that we offer, if we can assist you in any way, please let us know. You can email us at growahead@neosystemscorp.com, or certainly you can contact us through our website, www.neosystemscorp.com is the address. So again, thank you very much for your time and have a great day. Goodbye.